Happy Pride, y'all. It is June 2022. This is the month in which we celebrate the many LGBTQ plus identities that exist out there. So whether you are homonormative or radically queer to the extreme or anything in between, if you identify with one of the labels under that broad umbrella, or if you know and love someone who so identifies, this video is for you. Now, a little fairy asked me recently to come up with a drink to celebrate Pride for a happy hour that we're doing soon. As I got to thinking about it, I realized, who am I to come up with one singular Pride drink? I mean, isn't part of Pride celebrating the great diversity that exists within the broad queer community? So, rather than coming up with one drink, I decided to put together a list of drinks to, shall we say, taste the rainbow. We're going to walk our way all the way from red to purple. So, let's dive into the 6 drinks for Pride. For our red drink, we're going to take a very simple twist on a pretty classic cocktail. We're going to do what's called a Rickey. Now, a Rickey is very similar to a daiquiri, and a basic daiquiri in its purest form really has 3 ingredients. You need a rum, usually a light rum, lime juice, and a simple syrup. And from there, you can add all sorts of interesting stuff to it. Now, a Rickey is very similar. It starts with a rum, or actually it could be any kind of liquor, a gin Rickey, a bourbon Rickey, but we're going to do a rum Rickey. So we're going to have a shot of rum, we're going to have some lime juice, and then instead of a simple syrup, we're going to top it with a splash of club soda or some kind of seltzer water. And then we're going to do a little twist to it to make it red. So, pretty straightforward thing. This is a drink that you don't shake up, you just mix. So we're going to start with our glass of ice. We're going to add to it a shot of rum. And I have here Old Monk rum. It's a dark rum. It's a pretty nice rum that I picked up on a cruise to the Bahamas last summer. This is a drink that really does let your liquor shine because there's not a whole lot else going on there. All right, so there's our shot of rum. We're going to add about half a shot of lime juice. And then we will top it with some seltzer water that I just prepped up. The way we're going to make it red is twofold. We're going to start with a splash of grenadine. And then it's pretty simple, you just stir it up. Get everything properly mixed. Oh, that's got a nice deep red going on here. And then because we like to keep it fancy up in this joint, we are going to also add to it some edible flowers from the garden. 3 nasturtium that I just picked from the garden. Now, if you don't have fresh nasturtium or other fresh edible flowers, obviously it's just a garnish. It's totally optional. This might actually straddle somewhere between the daiquiri and the Rickey. But there's our red drink, a red rum Rickey. And some alliteration just to boot. This is a variation on an aviation that I sometimes like to call an apriation. It requires 3 ingredients. A gin of your choice. I'm using Green Hat Gin. Luxardo Cherry Liqueur. And in a regular aviation, you would use Creme de Violette. But for this one, we are going to use an apricot brandy instead. The way you do it, take your coupe glass, fill it with ice and water so you can get it chilled in advance. While that's chilling, take whatever kind of shaking cup you're going to use. In this case, I'm using a mason jar with a screw top strainer. Take your shaking cup, add some ice, a shot of gin, a half a shot of the maraschino cherry liqueur. In this case, a half a shot of the apricot brandy. This is orchard apricot. Get all of that into your shaker glass. Then, as you can see, we have that kind of orangish flavor going on, largely coming from the apricot and a little bit from the cherry, because it's not totally clear in this case. There is a clear cherry a clear cherry liqueur that you can get. Dump out the ice water from your coupe glass, and then strain into the coupe glass, leaving the ice behind. And there you are, an apriation for the nice orange color part of the rainbow. That is a gin drink. Whew, that's strong. For our yellow drink, we're going to get a little bit off the beaten path from truly classic cocktails and go to one that I first picked up several years ago when my sister took me to a speakeasy in Washington, D.C. This is the kind of place where they didn't really have a set menu. You walked in and they asked you what your flavor profile preferences were. And when I said I really liked things that were gingery, the question I got was, how gingery do you like it? You can't out-ginger me, I said. To which I was served a drink called a Penicillin. Now, Penicillin traditionally relies on Scotch whiskey, and I'm not a big Scotch fan. I don't keep it in the house. I didn't really feel like going to get more for this, so we're going to be changing it up a bit by using Chattanooga's rye bourbon instead. But if you want to do this in the more traditional fashion, you should get a Scotch. Now, the other things that we're going to do to kind of queer this up are going to be, instead of using lemon juice, we are going to use lime juice, mostly because that's what I have on hand, but traditionally it would be with lemon juice. And then we are going to make the traditional ginger honey syrup, and that's where we're going to do one more interesting thing to kind of shake things up a bit. So let's head over to the stove real quick and I'll show you how to make that syrup. So to make the ginger honey syrup, you're going to need about a 3-inch piece of fresh ginger peeled and sliced up as thinly as you can, kind of like I've got here. That's a pretty good amount of ginger. And you're going to need half a cup of honey and then half a cup of water as well. Here is also where we encounter the other change that I'm making to this, and this is how I'm queering this drink up. That honey is a CBD infused honey. If you have a CBD dispensary near you, or if you live in a state where THC is legal, you might find THC infused honey as well. So that's the other modification we're making. That is an infused honey, and we're going to further infuse it with the flavor of ginger, make it into a syrup, and then use that to make our modified Penicillin. All right, so we have it up to a boil. I've turned the temperature down so it will simmer and let it sit for about 5 minutes. You'll notice that some of that foam is going to form on the top. It's okay to leave it. It's okay to skim it off if you want to. When you're using honey to make a mixture like this, sometimes that will happen. It is possible to double this recipe as well and do a cup of honey, a cup of water, and a 6-inch piece of ginger, but unless you're going to be making a lot of this drink, I wouldn't recommend it, because you only need 3/4 of an ounce and you're going to end up with about a cup. So that's like 10 to 11 servings off of this batch of syrup, and you can keep it in the fridge for a little bit, but after about a week it's going to start to go bad. All right, well, our syrup has set overnight. I strained it out, discarded the leftover ginger. I'll walk through how you traditionally make this drink and talk through the differences we're doing, but at this point our differences are all in the ingredients, so everything else we're doing is going to be the same in terms of proportion and how you put it together and all of that. And once you have the right pieces, it's a pretty simple drink to make. You're going to take a shot of your Scotch, or in my case, the bourbon, the rye bourbon, and you're going to pour that over ice. So there's our bourbon pretending to be Scotch, a half a shot's worth of lemon juice. We're going to do lime, and then our ginger honey syrup. We'll need about half a shot worth of that, or 3/4 ounce. Mix all that in, and then here's the really fun part: a 1/4 ounce float. I'm not using a Scotch, I am instead using a smoked maple syrup that a friend of mine gave me recently. The idea is you want that smoky flavor of the Scotch kind of sitting on top, and you just let that float right on top there. It will sink through a little bit, but that's okay. Don't mix it in after that is the whole point. You don't mix that in. And then for the final touch, we're going to take a piece of candied ginger and put it in here as a garnish. And there is our queered up Penicillin. Queer Penicillin? Sure, queer Penicillin for the yellow color. And that is nice and gingery. And actually that smoked maple is pretty good with this. I'm going to go sit on the porch and enjoy this now. For our green drink, we're going to really do some interesting modifications. I'm going to use as a basis a classic drink called a bee's knees. And we're going to do a few twists on it. Now, a bee's knees is another pretty simple classic cocktail. It has 3 basic ingredients. It's a gin-based drink. It uses lemon juice, and the key ingredient that gives it its name is the honey, really a honey syrup. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use lime juice instead of lemon juice. We're going to stick with the gin, but to kind of hold with the theme, I'm going to be using Green Hat Gin, which is made in Washington, D.C. But of course, if you can't get a hold of this, your favorite gin will do nicely. And instead of a honey syrup, we're going to be using direct actual honey. I've already put a tablespoon of honey into this shaker jar that I'm going to be muddling in first, because the green element is going to come from muddling in some rosemary and some mint. Part of what we're doing here, instead of using the syrup, we're going to have to muddle first to make sure we really get the honey and the flavors dissolved together properly. Normally in a bee's knees, you take the honey syrup and you put it into a shaker cup with your lemon juice and your gin, and you shake over ice until well blended. But that's because the honey has already been put into a syrup, so it's already been dissolved. But if we try to dissolve honey directly into something with ice, it's probably not going to happen. So we are going to instead shake that up, pardon the pun, by doing some muddling first. So I've got my herbs and my honey in the jar. I'm going to add a little bit of lime juice so we have some liquid to work with here. We're aiming to muddle the herbs, but we're also trying to dissolve the honey. We're going to add shots worth of gin. Now we will add some ice in so that we can shake this over ice. And it looks like our honey has pretty well dissolved, so I think we've done well. Okay, and then to help with that, this one is going to be served in a martini glass. So we're going to empty that out, and we will strain our mixture into the martini glass. And kind of as expected, it's not green in color, but that's okay because we saved just a little bit of our mint and our rosemary to use as a garnish. Classic and lovely. Let's try this one out. That is delicious. For the blue, we're going to do a modification of a mint julep. A mint julep is pretty straightforward. It requires, of course, mint, some type of bourbon, a splash of lime juice, and a little bit of some kind of sugar. I'm using the Demerara sugar. You can use plain white sugar, or really any sugar you like, honestly. And then what we're going to do to modify this and get a little more color is we're going to add some fresh blueberries to it as well. So, basic idea is put a small handful of blueberries into your glass, and we're also going to go ahead and add in some mint. A trick on the mint, if you have a sprig like this and you kind of pinch it up near the top, you can grab it and run your hand on the side and pull the leaves off very quickly, and then you can just kind of snap off the top ones. Okay, so we have our mint and our berries in there. We're going to add just a little bit of sugar, not too much, on top of that, and then we probably don't need the lime juice right now because we're going to get juice from the berries. I'm going to add just a small splash of lime juice. And then once we have that all in the glass, we're going to crush it with our muddler, or in my case, a pestle. Make sure you really mash those leaves down well because you've got to express the oils in the leaves. In retrospect, I probably should have done all that without the berries and then added the berries second. That's pretty good. So this is what we have at the moment. And then to that, I am using some Chattanooga whiskey, their 10th anniversary Founders Blend that I picked up a few weeks ago when my cousin was visiting from out of town. It is exceptionally good. But you are not living in the Chattanooga area like me, find a bourbon of your choice. There are plenty of good ones out there, some small scale, some large scale. There's a lot of really good ones to choose from. So add your shot of bourbon in to the mix. We're going to add in a few ice cubes. Traditional mint julep is supposed to be crushed ice. You also need a splash of some kind of seltzer water or club soda. And there we are. Blue going on purple for a mint julep. That is refreshing. For our purple drink, we're going to make a classic cocktail called an Aviation. Now, when I first had an Aviation, this was several years ago. It was when my sister was pregnant with her first child, and I was visiting her shortly before the baby was due. And of course, she couldn't drink anything, but she loves making drinks. And she said, "Sean, I can't drink anything, but I can live vicariously through you. Can I make you a cocktail?" I said, "Of course." She said, "Have you ever had an aviation?" "No, I haven't. What is that?" "It's a gin drink. You'll love it." Around this time, my dad walks up and he says, "Hey, I think I'd like one of those too." My sister, without missing a beat, says, "Dad, this is a big boy drink." We ended up getting him a beer instead. So, for this big boy drink, you are going to need 1 shot of your gin of choice. In this case, I am using Aviation American Gin. You are going to need a half a shot of cherry liqueur. I am using the Luxardo Maraschino cherry liqueur. And the quintessential thing that gives it its takeaway color for the Aviation is the creme de violette. Making it's fairly simple. Take a coupe glass, fill it with ice, and then put some water in it. This is to go ahead and chill the glass so that you don't have any extra ice later on. Put your ice into your mixer. In this case, I'm using a mason jar. We're going to add to this 1 shot of gin, half a shot of your maraschino liqueur, which there are some that are clear. This one is not. There are at least 2 different varieties I've seen on the market. So you might find a clear one, you might find one that's got that deep red to it like mine. Quintessential piece, a creme de violette. It's this lovely dark purple color. It's going to lighten up a bit as it mixes. Then shake. All right, and then now you can see that lovely light purple color. That is a classic Aviation right there. And it is truly a big boy drink. Whew. Yes, it is. Or a big girl drink, as you prefer. We try not to be too gendered in this place. But definitely not for the faint of heart. Let's leave it at that. I almost forgot. To properly make this an appropriate drink for Pride, we do need to put a small twist on this classic. And in this case, a garnish. This lovely yellow nasturtium direct from my garden, which is going to sit here and hook onto the edge of the glass. It's a perfect little complimentary garnish to this Aviation. Now you can properly enjoy this in truly queer style. Somehow that makes it even better. Well, I thought I was done, and then I got to thinking about it and decided maybe we need just 1 more drink. Let's face it, maybe there are people out there watching this video thinking, "Man, I love a good happy hour, but I don't drink." There's all sorts of great reasons not to drink alcohol, but still want to be able to participate with people who are. So, may I suggest making a mocktail out of a very simple but flavorful soda. All you need is some kind of seltzer water or club soda or similar, and then some kind of flavored simple syrup. And I make a bunch of my own, so I have one here. You can kind of see all the stuff floating around there. That is lavender buds floating in there. Yes, this is a lavender syrup. Ginger, rosemary if you like. I love making it with mint, and I grow lots of mint here at the house. You need 1 part sugar to 1 part water. Usually I do a cup of each. Put that into a pot, bring it to a boil, and add in whatever kind of flavoring you want. Now, if you're doing something like rosemary, 1 or 2 sprigs is all it's going to take. If you are doing something like mint, well, depending on how much you're making, this is clearly a small amount. Usually a small handful of sprigs is going to be plenty for that too. You can adjust this to your preference. You can do all sorts of different stuff, different herbs and flowers and all sorts of flavors that you can come across. Really, the sky is the limit. And sometimes you'll even end up with interesting colors. And so then you can be participating and having some kind of a drink that's really interesting and unique that may or may not have alcohol in it. You could even add a shot of liquor if you wanted to. And then once you're ready to actually turn it into a drink, take your glass, fill it about 1/3 with your syrup and about 2/3 with your club soda. Don't forget to put some ice in there. And there you too can have a mocktail. All right, and there you have it. 6, no, actually 7 different drinks for Pride. So if you end up making one of these, please leave a comment. I would love to hear about it. If you end up modifying some of this, definitely let me know that too. I love hearing about creative ideas people come up with. And if you want to make your own list of drinks and maybe even video it as well, please link to it for me because I would love to see what you come up with. Happy Pride, y'all. Cheers.